What's up everybody, blessed be. My name is Manon and you are watching Witch in the Working, where we will be discussing all things witchy in and around, throughout and about, above, below, and beyond. This video offers my personal views on the topic at hand. Please visit me on my other platforms as well, including Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon, all linked down in the description below. The full script of this video and most of the others is available on my Patreon account for download as desired to build your very own Witch in the Working Book of Shadows. Do you need help with a spell or fancy a tarot reading? Shoot on over to my store, Bewitching and Bizarre, with choices listed down in the description below for your personalized working and or reading. So, when most people hear Ordo Templi Orientis, they picture a secret chamber, dramatic rituals, or some kind of mystical society pulled straight out of a fantasy novel. But the real story is a lot more interesting than the rumors. In this video, we're going to peel back the layers and explore where the O.T.O actually came from, how it grew, and why it still captures the imagination of seekers today. Whether you're brand new to the topic or you've been around the occult block a few times, this journey offers a chance to understand the order through a clear, grounded lens. No hype, no sensationalism, just the fascinating evolution of one of the most talked about groups in modern esoteric history. Let's jump in and see what's really behind the initials. Roll intro. Welcome back everyone. When people first hear Ordo Templi Orientis, they usually envision something dramatic. Robes, torches, maybe a mysterious chant echoing in a stone temple somewhere in Germany. And sure, the name sounds like it came straight out of a medieval fantasy novel, but the real story of the O.T.O begins in a much more relatable place. A handful of curious idealistic thinkers trying to make sense of spirituality during one of the biggest magical revivals in modern history. To get where the O.T.O came from, imagine Europe in the late 1800s. Science was booming, old religious structures were being questioned, and people were hungry for new ways to understand the universe. Spiritualism was sweeping parlors, secret societies were popping up like mushrooms after rain, and folks were blending Eastern philosophies with Western esoteric ideas. It was a wild spiritual buffet, and everyone had a plate. Into this mix stepped Karl Kellner, an Austrian industrialist with a serious fascination for hidden wisdom. Kellner wasn't a cloaked wizard type. Think of him more like a well-traveled intellectual who loved exploring everything from yoga to Rosicrucianism. He believed that beneath the surface of the world's mystical traditions, there was a unified core of truths, kind of like finding one big cosmic instruction manual that everyone else had only seen in pieces. Kellner dreamed of creating a fraternity that would bring together the practical aspects of esoteric work, breath, meditation, ritual, symbolism, with a supportive community of people learning together. Not a religion, not a loose gathering, but an order structured enough to help people grow while still giving them room to explore. It was his attempt at blending ancient techniques with a modern approach to self-development. But Kellner didn't do it alone. Enter Theodore Royce, an energetic, sometimes controversial organizer with connections across Europe's occult and Masonic networks. If Kellner was the visionary, Royce was the guy who knew how to push a project forward. He had the charisma, the contacts, and the drive to turn Kellner's idea into something real. And that's basically how the O.T.O began to take shape, through the combination of Kellner's philosophical heart and Royce's structural backbone. Now, one thing that made the O.T.O stand out from other groups of the time was its attempts to be more than a copy of Freemasonry. Don't get me wrong, Masonic influence is absolutely there. The degrees, the emphasis on initiation, the structured progression, you can spot the similarities from a mile away. But the O.T.O added another layer, a willingness to integrate teachings from the East, practices from Tantra, and elements of magical ritual that weren't usually found in mainstream esoteric lodges. Think of it like a fusion restaurant, before fusion restaurants were, before they were cool. The O.T.O's early teachings focused on personal transformation, not just symbolic rituals. Members were guided through exercises meant to develop the will, deepen spiritual awareness, and strengthen the connection between mind, body, and spirit. The idea wasn't simply to collect titles or memorize secret passwords. It was about becoming a more awakened version of yourself. And for many people living in a time of huge social and philosophical upheaval, that promise was genuinely appealing. Another important thing to understand is that the O.T.O didn't start out famous. In its earliest phase, it was small, almost intimate, with members who were more invested in experimentation than tradition. People were comparing notes, translating obscure manuscripts, mixing meditation systems, and trying to figure out what universal truth might actually look like. Some ideas clicked, others fizzled, and a few more were way ahead of their time. This experimental nature is what made the O.T.O different. It wasn't about clinging to the past, it was about exploring possibilities. Of course, all of this was just the setup. The order had its framework, its philosophy, and its direction, but it wasn't until Aleister Crowley arrived on the scene that the O.T.O would be reshaped into something far more widely known. Crowley didn't create the order, but he certainly left fingerprints on every corner of it. Before we get to him though, it's important to appreciate that the O.T.O began as a sincere attempt to unify scattered esoteric traditions into a understandable, cohesive path. It was built by people who truly believed that hidden wisdom could help individuals understand themselves and the universe more deeply. And whether you agree with their methods or not, that spark of curiosity and hunger for meaning is something that almost anyone can relate to. When Aleister Crowley steps into any story, it's a little like a storm blowing through a quiet neighborhood. Things shift, conversations change, and before you know it, nothing looks the same. And that's exactly what happened when Crowley crossed paths with the O.T.O. He didn't create the order, but he absolutely steered it into the future. And depending on who you ask, that was either a blessing, a curse, or a strange mix of both. Let's rewind to the early 1900s. The O.T.O was still figuring itself out. Karl Kellner's ideas were alive, Theodore Roos was keeping things running, and the group had a clear structure but not a fully defined soul. That's when Crowley appeared, already controversial, already brilliant, and already developing his own spiritual system called Thelema. Crowley joined the O.T.O in 1910, and it didn't take long for the leadership to notice he wasn't just another member. He wrote, he experimented, he ritualized, and he brought a level of intensity that many people at the time found irresistible. Roos especially saw potential in him, even if their relationship later turned into a complicated dance of friendship, disagreement, and power struggles. The real turning point came when Crowley introduced Thelema to the order. Now, Thelema isn't just a collection of rituals or a set of magical instructions. It's a philosophy built around one central idea: do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. People love to take that line and run wild with it, acting like Crowley was saying do whatever you want. But that's not the point. True will in Thelemic thought means discovering the purpose you were meant to fulfill, your inner compass, not your impulses. Crowley believed that Thelema was the natural next step in human spiritual evolution, so he didn't hesitate to weave it into the O.T.O's rituals, degrees, and teachings. And honestly, whether someone loves him or can't stand him, you have to admit he had a gift for taking abstract ideas and turning them into something dramatic and memorable. He infused the order with new symbolism, new liturgy, and a worldview centered around personal liberation and spiritual discovery. One of the biggest contributions Crowley made was revising the initiatory system. Before his involvement, the O.T.O leaned heavily on European esoteric traditions. After him, the degrees became unmistakably Thelemic, each one pointing toward understanding and embodying the law of Thelema. He wrote new rites, adjusted old ones, and blended ceremonial magic with philosophical depth. Whether it was genius or madness depends on who's telling the story, but it definitely left its mark. And then you have the Book of the Law, the heart of Thelema. Crowley claimed it was dictated to him by a discarnate entity named Aiwass in 1904. He treated this book like a spiritual cornerstone, believing it revealed the dawn of a new era, the Aeon of Horus. In his mind, this wasn't a symbolic age change, it was a real shift in human consciousness, and the O.T.O was going to help lead people into it. Crowley's influence didn't go unnoticed. Some early members loved the new direction, others weren't so sure. Roos himself, toward the end of his leadership, had moments where he questioned whether Crowley had taken things just a little too far. Crowley, never one to hold back, argued right back. Their disagreements eventually led to tension. By the time the dust settled, the O.T.O was, whether anyone liked it or not, essentially molded around Crowley's vision. That's the transformation that matters most. Under Crowley, the O.T.O stopped being just another esoteric order floating in Europe's magical tide. It became the primary outer vehicle for Thelema, a system with its own mythos, its own theology, and its own approach to spiritual growth. But despite the fireworks, Crowley didn't throw away everything Kellner and Roos built. He expanded it. He blended structure with innovation. He took the foundation and painted his worldview across it like someone turning an empty wall into a mural. Even his critics, who are many, often admit the order wouldn't be anywhere near as influential today without his touch. Crowley's arrival didn't just change the O.T.O, it defined it. And whether you see him as a prophet, a rebel, or simply a complicated man with enormous influence, one thing's certain: nothing about the O.T.O makes sense without understanding the storm he brought with him. ever wondered what actually goes on inside the Ordo Templi Orientis, you're not alone. The O.T.O tends to carry an air of mystery that makes people assume there's some wild cinematic ritual happening behind every closed door. But the truth is a lot more structured, a lot more organized, and honestly a lot more interesting than the myths floating around online. At its core, the O.T.O is built around an initiatory system, a ladder of experiences meant to guide someone from curious newcomer to someone who understands and lives in the principles of the order. Think of it like an internal roadmap. You start at one point, you grow, you learn, and each degree highlights a new aspect of spiritual development. It's not about earning trophies or stacking ranks. It's about progress in a very personal sense. The degrees are arranged in a hierarchy that loosely mirrors Freemasonry, but once Crowley left his fingerprints on the system, the flavor became unmistakably Thelemic. While the order doesn't publicly reveal the details of each degree, and honestly secrecy is part of what makes the experience meaningful, we can talk about the structure in a general way. The O.T.O begins with the Minerva level, which is basically the threshold. Imagine knocking on the door and peeking inside to see if the path fits you. It's not a commitment to a lifetime of study. It's more like dipping a toe in to feel the water. After that comes the initiatory sequence, known as the Man of Earth degrees. These early steps focus on personal growth, symbolic rebirth, discovering one's inner will, and learning the foundational philosophy of the order. Nothing over the top, just the groundwork that prepares someone for deeper exploration. As members advance, the degrees become more focused on responsibility, service, and understanding the wider structure of Thelema. The middle section of the order, the Lover Triad, explores themes of unity, harmony, and the relationship between the individual and the cosmos. These degrees ask more from the initiate, more reflection, more discipline, and a clearer sense of purpose. Then there's the Hermit Triad, the upper section of the O.T.O hierarchy. These degrees deal with teaching, leadership, and representing the order's ideals. They're not about status, they're about taking what you've learned and using it to help others grow. It's like graduating into a position where you become the guide instead of the student. But structure alone doesn't make the O.T.O what it is. The real heartbeat of the order comes from the community itself, the lodges, oases, and camps that form the local bodies. These groups host classes, social gatherings, study nights, and of course initiations. Every local body has its own personality. Some lean academic and love diving into ancient texts. Others are more ritual focused and thrive on group magic. Some enjoy blending fellowship, philosophy, and creative expression. There's a surprising amount of diversity across the order. One thing that often surprises people is that the O.T.O is not just a ritual machine. It has an administrative side too. There are officers, charters, bylaws, and all the practical logistics that make any organization function. It's a bit like running a cross between a spiritual school and a volunteer-driven community center. There's structure, but also enough flexibility for each local body to shape its own culture. And then of course we have the Gnostic Mass, the public ritual most associated with the O.T.O. While it technically belongs in the next chapter of this video's territory, it's still a key part of the order structure. The Mass acts as a shared experience, a kind of spiritual anchor that ties everything else together. You're not betraying any oaths by saying it's a ritual full of rich symbolism, formed with intention and designed to bring participants into a deeper connection with Thelemic philosophy. It's the one place where seekers, members, and total outsiders can gather in the same room and witness the heart of the system. When you look at the O.T.O structure as a whole, it becomes clear that it isn't just a club with secret handshakes. It's a layered journey inward. Each degree is a checkpoint. Each ritual is a moment of reflection. Each local body is a little ecosystem helping people explore magic, philosophy, and personal transformation in a supportive environment. You don't have to be a hardcore ceremonial magician to appreciate the system. You just have to be someone curious enough to explore its layers. And honestly, that curiosity is exactly what the O.T.O is built to nurture. When people hear that someone is a member of the O.T.O, they usually imagine some kind of round-the-clock ritual lifestyle, robes before breakfast, chanting at lunch, secret meetings every night. But the truth is much more grounded and honestly a lot more relatable. O.T.O members aren't living in some occult theme park. They're regular people who just happen to weave magic, philosophy, and community into their everyday lives. I myself am a first-degree member of the O.T.O. So what do members of the O.T.O actually do? Let's start with the most visible piece, the Gnostic Mass. If the O.T.O had a signature ritual, this would be it. It's a ceremony written by Crowley, full of poetic symbolism and dramatic imagery, but the heart of it is simple. It's a celebration of Thelemic philosophy. Anyone can attend, even non-members. which makes it a kind of gateway ritual for curious newcomers. Some people come for the atmosphere, some come for spiritual connection, and others come just to see what all the mystery is about. And that's okay. Nobody's grading anyone on how initiated they look. Outside the Mass, the day-to-day life of O.T.O members varies wildly depending on the person. That's one thing people often misunderstand. The order isn't a monolithic cult with a single way of practicing magic. It's more like a framework that encourages self-discovery. Members study at their own pace, experiment with rituals, attend classes, or dive deeply into meditation techniques. Some lean heavy into ceremonial magic, others focus on mystical introspection, and plenty do both. A big part of O.T.O practice revolves around Thelema itself. Members spend time studying the Book of the Law and other Thelemic texts, not because they're forced to, but because the philosophy opens doors for self-reflection. True will becomes a constant companion, like an internal question that pops up in different corners of life. Is this choice guiding me towards my purpose? Am I living authentically? For many members, Thelema isn't just a mystical idea, it's a compass they check regularly. Then there's the magical practice. Some initiates work with rituals designed to strengthen discipline, concentration, and spiritual awareness. These aren't Harry Potter spells, they're focused acts of intention built around symbolism and energetic direction. A typical member might perform rituals like the Star Ruby or the Star Sapphire, or set aside time for meditation or pranayama. Nothing flashy, nothing theatrical, just consistent spiritual exercise like going to a gym for the soul. And if you talk to a handful of O.T.O members, you'll notice that everyone has their own mix. One person might be fascinated by the Kabbalah, another astrology or tarot. Someone else might love group ritual work but prefer their personal magic to stay quiet and private. The order gives you the tools in the community, but you shape your own path. Speaking of community, that's a huge part of what O.T.O life looks like. Local bodies often hold workshops, book discussions, social nights, and informal hangouts. It's not uncommon to see people sharing notes on a Crowley text one minute and then joking about their day jobs the next. There's something grounding about that balance. You're surrounded by people exploring the same philosophical terrain, but you're not floating off into some disconnected mystical space. There's a real sense of friendship. One area that often confuses outsiders is the relationship between the O.T.O and the AA. While these groups overlap historically and philosophically, they're not the same thing. The AA is more solitary, more focused on personal initiation and rigorous discipline. The O.T.O, on the other hand, blends individual practice with a structured social framework. Members might practice AA-style techniques, but the O.T.O itself is built around community interaction. Another thing people don't always expect is how flexible the organization is. Not every member works magic daily. Not everyone meditates for an hour each morning. And not every person in the order is a hardcore ceremonial practitioner. Some join because they love the philosophy, others because they want the fellowship, and some because the ritual speaks to them on a personal level. The common thread is exploration. The O.T.O gives people permission to test their ideas, try new methods, ask questions, and grow spiritually without a rigid dogma breathing down their necks. It encourages curiosity, real living curiosity, not the kind that stops at a book's edge. So when you picture what O.T.O members do, think of a vibrant, varied community of seekers, people studying, practicing, connecting, and discovering their own relationship with magic and meaning. It's not about being a perfect initiate, it's about showing up for your own journey. When you look at the Ordo Templi Orientis today, it's easy to forget that this order started as a small European experiment over a century ago. Yet somehow through wars, leadership changes, legal battles, and waves of occult trends, the O.T.O has managed to stick around, and not just survive, but carve out a surprisingly large footprint in the modern esoteric landscape. Whether people admire it, misunderstand it, or love debating its history online, the O.T.O has undeniably left a mark. Let's start with influence, because the ripple effect from this order has reached far beyond its membership. If you practice ceremonial magic, chaos magic, or even some forms of Wicca, chances are you touched ideas that were shaped, directly or indirectly, by Thelema and the O.T.O. Crowley's writing, for all its fire and eccentricity, changed the way people thought about ritual, personal will, and spiritual autonomy. Concepts like true will, the Aeon of Horus, and magic with a K have spilled into countless books, groups, and traditions. I personally use magic with a K every time I type the word magic. Even if someone has never cracked open the book of the law, they've probably been influenced by authors who studied it. You see thelemic fingerprints in everything from modern spellcrafting to shadow work to the way people talk about intuition and personal sovereignty. And while the O.T.O isn't a recruiting machine by any stretch, its teachings have quietly soaked into the wider occult community the same way a strong dye colors a whole river. One of the biggest reasons for this lasting impact is the Order's willingness to mix structure with exploration. The O.T.O preserved a formal initiatory model at a time when many traditions were becoming loose or scattered, and that sense of order, pun intended, gave people a framework they could trust. At the same time, Thelema encouraged self-reflection and personal discovery, which kept the tradition from becoming rigid or stale. You could say the O.T.O managed to balance discipline with freedom, and that blend attracted generations of seekers who wanted both guidance and independence. Of course, not everyone views the O.T.O through a rosy lens. Modern perceptions are all over the place, ranging from fascination to confusion to outright suspicion. Some people see Crowley's name attached and immediately picture the worst tabloid rumors ever printed. Others assume the rituals must be dangerous or extreme simply because they're private. And then you have the folks who treat the O.T.O like a relic, something old school and dramatic that no longer fits in today's spiritual culture. But that's where context matters. Many occult groups keep their rituals confidential, not because they're doing something outrageous, but because shared mystery creates meaningful experiences. This is the way Gardnerian witchcraft is as well. The secrecy is symbolic. It's about protecting the ritual's impact, not hiding skeletons in the basement. Unfortunately, the internet loves sensational stories more than it loves nuance, so myths spread a lot faster than reality. Another modern challenge comes from the Order's internal history. The O.T.O has had its share of disagreements, leadership transitions, and legal disputes. And while that sounds dramatic, it's honestly pretty normal for any organization that spans continents and decades. Churches, political groups, fraternities, everyone has their messy chapters. The important part is that the O.T.O has continuously adapted, clarified its direction, and maintained a functioning structure long after many other occult groups collapsed under their own weight. These days, the O.T.O is a living community, not a museum piece. Members gather for rituals, classes, and social events. They debate philosophy, study symbolism, and support each other's spiritual growth. You'll find artists, programmers, teachers, baristas, people from every walk of life who simply feel drawn to Thelema and its approach to personal transformation. The Order may look serious on paper, but in reality, it's built from regular people exploring big ideas together. So when we talk about the legacy of the O.T.O, we're talking about more than Crowley's shadow or the mysterious rituals everyone whispers about. We're talking about a tradition that sparked conversations about freedom, self-knowledge, and the nature of spiritual authority. We're talking about a group that influenced everything from modern witchcraft to internet occultism. And we're talking about an order that continues to evolve, not because it's chasing popularity, but because real people still find value in what it offers. Whether you love it, question it, or just find it intriguing, the O.T.O remains one of the most enduring and influential currents in contemporary magic. Its legacy isn't just historical, it's living, breathing, and still unfolding. When you step back and look at the O.T.O as a whole, what you see isn't just an old occult order wrapped in secrecy and ritual. It's a long unfolding conversation about what it means to seek truth, purpose, and personal transformation. From Kellner's early vision to Crowley's thunderous arrival, from the carefully crafted degrees to the living communities practicing today, the O.T.O has been shaped by generations of people trying to understand themselves and the universe a little better. Whether you agree with their methods or simply find them fascinating from a distance, there's something undeniably compelling about a system built on curiosity, exploration, and the belief that every person has a deeper path waiting to be discovered. If anything, the real takeaway from studying the O.T.O isn't about joining or rejecting it. It's about recognizing how powerful the human drive for meaning truly is. This order's legacy shows how far people will go to understand their inner world, how boldly they'll chase spiritual insight, and how communities can form around shared quests for knowledge. Even if Thelema isn't your compass, the reminder still holds. Your path is your own to shape. Your will is worth listening to, and your spiritual journey doesn't need to look like anyone else's. If this exploration leaves you more curious, more reflective, or simply more open-minded, then the O.T.O has already done its job, at least in spirit. Well, that's going to wrap up this episode of Witch into Working. Have you ever heard of the O.T.O? Have you ever been to a Gnostic Mass, or are you a member? Let us all know in the comments below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and please subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to ring that little bell to be reminded of the wonderful and exciting future episodes to come. I love you guys and gals. Blessed be.